Hello.
Welcome. Welcome to day 3 of our photography bootcamp. I'm Ellie,
I'm Arabella.
and we're Weekend Creative. We're an art director and photographer team based in the Bay Area, right outside San Francisco.
Whoop, whoop.
And we're so excited to be here with you guys. It's been a really fun week so far. Today, we're going to be moving from pre-production into post-production, working on some of those images that we planned out yesterday. And Arabella is going to be showing you her process starting in Lightroom and then later on this week moving into Photoshop. So we're super happy that you guys are here. Feel free to say hi in the chat. We want to
Yes.
hear from you. We want your questions and definitely want to get to as many of those as possible.
Yeah.
So,
Say hi if you were here yesterday and the day
yes,
before. If this is your first time, also tell us where you're watching from. It's always super
yes.
exciting.
Oh my gosh, it's so fun to hear where everybody is. Such an
I
international
know.
audience.
Honestly.
So,
But thank you guys so much for tuning in. And yeah, like Ellie said, we're going into post-production now. So
mhm.
today's all about Lightroom, and I'm going to be showing you a little bit of organization, culling, some of the pre-treatment that I like to apply to images, before we do the intricate work in Photoshop, and also share a couple of, just techniques or things that you can do to streamline some of your process. And so if you have any questions along the way, please, ask them. Ellie will interrupt me. I don't mind
Yes.
at all.
Yes, and the files that we're working with are actually, you can access them, you can edit them along with
Yes.
us. So those are linked in our bio, which is right beneath the video. So make sure to check those out. And if you edit them, you can upload them to Discord. We'll drop a link in the chat for that so we can see your edits, which will be super fun.
Yes. Yes, exactly. But anyway, let's get started and
Let's
dive
go.
right in. So obviously, if you happen to see yesterday's video, we did work on, Ellie worked on an amazing little mock-up that I have here, and as you can see, we have the actual image right behind. So obviously, it's things are going to change, things are going to look different. A mock-up might not always like transfer exactly the same, but it's definitely like a guide. And so
Mhm.
we have the actual image here. But I wanted to kind of just show you a little bit of organization and culling in Lightroom. So I've actually dropped in all of the images from this little shoot that we had done. And I kind of want to show you how just I take you from selecting things. So obviously this shoot actually was part of a client shoot. Shout out Cameron Hughes Wine. So I have this image here, and I'll tell you why I have it in here. But as you can see, there's a little gray card in here, and we're going to
Mhm.
be using it shortly. But so I have that in here, and I have all the rest of the images. So one of the things that I like to do when I'm in Lightroom, to cull, they have a really great rating system. And basically it's the keys 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which translate to 1 stars, 5 stars, whatever.
Yeah.
So something that I like to do is I like to just go through each image. And obviously, like, even though we had only the one mock-up, we did shoot extra images that were, that are all part of the series. And we're big on personal projects and creating sets of images so that clients can see, okay, like they can create like multiple images out of one set or one scene. And so, I'm just going to go through and kind of make my selects here. So as you can see, this first one was like super busy. We've got the second one that's a little bit cleaner. And then
Mhm.
if you can tell there, we made a little change to the apples right here. So if we go back and forth, let me go out to fit. You can see that we rotated the apple. So I actually like
Mhm.
this version more. So I'm going to click on 5, and I'm going to set the rating to 5, and that's going to be my select. And I'm actually going to set this one as 5 because we'll need it later. But so I keep on going. We're going through this one. Sometimes you do just get the shot right away, and that's great. We did use kind of like a live view feature that helped us to style our sets, which makes it super easy. So sometimes
So much
you
easier.
just get it in one shot, and that's great. So I'm going to set that one to 5 as well. And I'm going to continue going on because we are going to be doing some compositing later, which you'll see. So this was actually like a pretty last minute, like shot idea that we had, that we were like, let's just run with it. So obviously there was a lot of photographs that we had where we kind of were discovering, okay, what's the best shot, what's the best, like, and as you can see, these are our hands as well. Ellie's hand, my hand. So sometimes we'll end up being the models for our own shoots.
Arabella had her hand in the shot, and then her other hand was like reaching over to press the button on her computer to take the picture. So
Exactly.
it's a balancing act.
Multitasking at its finest.
Multi-talented, yeah, too.
Multi-talented.
Model and photographer.
exactly. So obviously this is a really fun shot with, Ellie kind of having the pear, and we played around with different things, to see what the best outcome was. So I know off the top that some of my favorite shots are towards the end. So I'm just going to hop on over to some of those end ones. And, we moved around with the placement of the apples and all that sort of thing. So you just kind of want to like take notice of like little details. But so we have over here my favorite. So we ended up kind of selecting the cupped hand of Ellie instead. And so I
Mhm.
think there was this shot that I liked the most out of the all of them. So I like the height, everything looks good. So I'm going to select that 5, set rating to 5. And then because we're going to be compositing, I did like my hand in a different shot, and that's going to be, that's going to come up later. So it's one of these shots right here. And I think it might have been over here. Actually, it might have been at the end right here. So as you can see, we played around with all sorts of things. So
So much.
so much. And I think it might have been this one right here. Yes. So I'm going to select the set rating to 5. And I have a couple more images as well that I'll select on my own, but just to give you an idea. So now when you go over to this right hand corner, bottom corner of Lightroom Classic, by the way, I'm in Lightroom Classic. Love Lightroom Classic. So you can actually select the 5 stars, and then all of the images that you have selected will show up on here. And so then you can just stay in this section here so that you don't have to sift through any of the images, and it works great.
Scroll through all of them to
Yeah,
find the ones that
exactly.
you want.
So,
Yeah.
so then, so you've got all of these right here. So let's just get right into editing. So the first thing that I like to do, and I head on over to the Develop tab. So there's a couple of different ways that you can do uh, like sorry, what I'm blanking out. Color correction, white balance correction. So the reason that I have this little gray card in here is so that I can quickly correct the colors in this image. So right off the bat, as I'm looking at this image, I'm seeing that it's a little magenta, right? So
Mhm.
it's nice to be able to have this gray card that's an 18% gray, neutral gray, because all I have to do is head on over to this white balance section right here, grab the eyedropper tool and select the gray card. And then there you go. Those are our colors. And of course, I could totally eyeball this too. If you've had some practice with, just kind of like seeing the temperatures in an image, you can kind of like do it on your own. So like I said, there's a little bit of magenta in here. So I'm going to slide over the tint over to the green and just kind of keep adding until it feels like natural. And then I also feel like I need to add a little bit of warmth. So I'm going to
Mhm.
go over to maybe like over to the right to the warmer section. So that's kind of an eyeball, right? And it's kind of like about the same thing, like I kind of I like to test myself sometimes, see if I get it right. But that's kind of like the first thing that I like to do, right? So, but because I already have, this gray card, I'm going to keep it here. Obviously, this isn't the image that we're going to be working on, but it's important because I want to show you why it's nice in Lightroom that you can copy settings and paste them over. So once I do the white balance correction, I go down into the lens correction panel, and I always do remove chromatic aberration and enable profile corrections. And that's basically so that, you can fix any lens distortion. So
Mhm.
yeah, and then I will go ahead and now right click on that image and under develop settings, copy settings, and I'm going to go ahead and check all, but then I'm going to uncheck transform, masking, and crop. And spot removal. I only want the rest of the items checked. And I'm going to press copy. And now I can just literally paste all of them onto the rest of the images. And that way they're all the same. They're all cohesive. They all work together. So develop settings and paste settings. And everything that got pasted is right there. And it's super easy. So yeah, that's like kind of like what I usually do on in here as like the starting point. But one other thing that I like to do is so I'm going to go over to this image right here, or actually I'm going to do this one. Sometimes like you might not always get the exact like the plane level, the what am I talking about, like the horizontal line isn't always
Yes.
perfect. So I always like to go over to the crop tool, and there's a little straighten tool that has like a little ruler, like a little lever, a leveler. And I like to use that really quick just to kind of level things out. And it's so nice. And then it just kind of rotates it, and then you press enter and you're good.
That's so easy.
So super easy. And another way that you can do the same exact thing, I'm going to just press Command Z to go back. You can just go all the way down here, and there's a whole section for transform. And Lightroom has actually some pretty good settings already, almost like presets for transform that you can use. In this case, I don't know that it would work in this image as much because, as you can see, there's not a whole lot of lines in this image. A
Yeah.
lot of it's just, rounded. There's a lot of
Very
curves,
organic.
very organic. So if I click auto, it's not going to find anything to correct, right? Because there's not a whole lot to go off of.
Mhm.
So sometimes I like to do a guided, and that's where you can add up to like two or more guides to kind of help correct. So maybe the first guide can be this one, from one side to the other. Maybe I'll zoom in a little bit, and maybe my other guide is somewhere in the middle. I definitely always want to do something in the middle, and maybe it's just these little spikes here, and then it'll fix it. And there you go. And it uses those guides as a guide basically to correct. So that's, and you've also got like all these other panels too. So there's really so many ways that you can like do something, and
Yeah.
but mine's always the trusty lever that I like to use, which is just at the top here and the crop tool. So there we go. Fix that. Press OK. So
So nice too, because sometimes with your eyes, you're like, wait, is
yeah,
it off? I
is
can't
it
really
off? Is it
tell.
not?
Is it
Yeah,
crooked or is it just me? Or is it like the items in the scene kind of make it feel a little bit crooked, you know?
exactly. Yeah, sometimes your eyes can play tricks on you.
Yeah.
Obviously, like even in this image, like let's say for example, right, like if I were to um I can use that like guides here because now I have an actual object in here, right? I think
Right.
it could actually work better. Let me see. Yeah. And then guided. And then so yeah, I just kind of do the same thing. And then I also use this as a guide, right? Like the little edge of the label, and then it
Mhm.
fixes it. And there you go. So it's pretty simple, it's easy, and it works great. So
Yeah.
yeah. So after I've done kind of like my, fixing, I'm going to fix the rest of these as well. And I'm going to assume that the rest of these have the same kind of little offness about them. So I'm going to go ahead and just go back to that first one where I did the correction. I'm going to go to develop settings, copy settings, and I'm going to check none and only check the crop, right? Because I only want to
Mhm.
move over the crop. So you can get specific about what
What
settings
you
you
wanna
want to.
copy over. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
And so
duplicate.
then Mm-hmm. So develop settings, you paste that, and everything's good to go. So um, one of the things that I like to do in Lightroom is make my life easier. Why not? Like if there's things that I can do
Yes.
to simplify my process, especially because, I like to use Lightroom a lot. In conjunction with Photoshop. So sometimes
Mhm.
what I end up doing is I'll start out at my editing in Lightroom and then move over to Photoshop and then bring it back into Lightroom and maybe apply some effect or something, right? So two of the presets that I want to show you to make your own is something that you can do beforehand, right? So like a lens correction, right? So I'm going to go ahead and just um, on this image that I've already corrected the white balance and the lens correction. So I am going to just go over to my presets panel, which you can find on this left-hand side, and you're going to press plus here and create preset, right? I'm going to call this lens correction, right? So
Nice.
instead of having to, I mean, not that it's that much, but instead of having to scroll all the way down to the lens correction
Yeah.
panel and, they use their presets is right here, I'm going to make
It's an easy click.
easy click,
Mhm.
and as you can see there, all the settings are right here. So all you have
Yeah.
to do is just check off the lens correction, and it's going to save that edit onto that preset. And so then I'm going to create it, and there it shows up, right? So if I were to reset this image, I'm going to hit lens correction, and then it fixes itself. So I don't know if you
That's
could
awesome.
tell, but it's just super easy right
Yeah.
there. Easy.
Ted says,
So
awesome tips. Lightroom is such an underappreciated app, which
I mean,
is true.
honestly, it really
Yeah.
is. Like,
Yeah. Photoshop gets all the glory, but
it
look how
really
much
does.
Lightroom can
But
do.
Lightroom is kind of like like you can't, like it's my thing to start out. Like it's like
Yeah.
what leads me into Photoshop, and I love that it like retains all of the quality too, which
Mhm.
sometimes like when you go into Photoshop, like even though yes you have layers, but you end up like the raw image turns into
Mhm.
a Photoshop file. You can't go
Right.
back.
Yeah.
And so that's what I love about Lightroom is that then, it applies like the edits as an XMP file. So it's great. Love it. So that's just one way that you can, do a preset. Another preset that you can do is, for example, like you can already see that I have a couple in here that are
Mhm.
based off of clients, right? So let's say you have a
Yeah.
client that has a particular editing style, or maybe you just like to apply a certain editing style to those images every time. For example, one of our candle clients, Anecdote, they love that kind of grainy look. It's kind of
Yeah.
like storytelling, a little vintage. So let's say I want to make a preset for like a soft and grainy look, right? So what I would want to do is I want to apply that soft and grainy look. And maybe, this doesn't have to be just effects. It can be color, can be anything
Mhm.
really. I mean, as you can see, I have quite a bit of presets here.
Yes.
I feel like presets sometimes get a bad rap, but they actually can be pretty amazing, especially when you start to make your own,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah,
if you have a particular
streamlines
style.
your process, which is always
Exactly.
great. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's say I do want to do like a soft grainy look, let's say I kind of pump up the shadows and, you know, kind of make it hazy a little bit and add a little texture, and I'm just kind of playing with some of these sliders here. And as I go down, there's the effects panel, and I'm going to really punch up the grain. Like, let's say I love that style, right? And I'm like, yes, give it to me. So, so then I do the same exact thing. I just go over to my presets panel, create preset. And now all I want to do is this time I want to select everything that I had changed, right? I don't want to choose anything else. I just want to do the texture, the clarity, the dehaze, and the effects, right? So then I'm going to call this soft and grainy. And I'm going to create it. And there you go. And so now it shows up right here. And if I go over to this image right here and I select that, there it goes. There it goes applying it, and you're good to go. It's amazing.
So easy.
So easy. So that's like one of the easiest ways that you can, like kind of save effects if you like a certain, if you find something that you really, really enjoy and you really like.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And so then like the other thing that I wanted to talk about too. Sorry, I'm like rambling at this point. So if there's
No,
any
you're
questions, let me know.
yes.
But yeah, and so that's kind of like really what like the gist of what I do in Lightroom before I do all the intricate editing in Photoshop. But one of the amazing things that I do really like about when I work with Lightroom and Photoshop is that um, I can like work seamlessly from one to the other, right?
Mhm.
So um, for example, like I can go and right click on this image. I can do edit in and edit in Photoshop, right? So then like let's just say that it's gonna go open anyway. I'm gonna bring it up, and sorry, it might take a little bit. um, but here it is, and here's my image. It's loading,
And that's
and
gonna
I'm
take
gonna
all of the things that you did, right? And it's
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's gonna, I'm gonna convert the document's colors to the working space, right? Because
Mhm.
Lightroom works in ProPhoto RGB, but I do want it to be sRGB since that's kind of like what I'm gonna be exporting for anyway. So here's our image, and I'm sorry if you can't see like the bottom, but that's okay. But essentially this is, like once you take it to Photoshop, and let's say, I start to play around with colors, I'm gonna get real crazy with it, something, and let's say I just, I'm just going playing around with all the colors, whatever. So then I press OK. Okay. And then let's say I press save, and now it's going to save it, and it's going to come right back into Lightroom. And that's like a really awesome thing because let's say, again, like let's say I do want to apply that soft and grainy preset, but
Yeah.
after I've done all of my intricate
Mhm.
edits, which would be like, if I wanted to composite, if I wanted to which we'll be going over later tomorrow and Friday. But like it's so nice that like it just kind of comes back in here, right? And it's applied those color changes that I've done. And now I can do even more on top of it, right? So then I've added that soft and grainy look. And now, there you have it. So it's pretty cool. Like I just love the seamlessness between
Yeah, to
Lightroom
be able
Classic
to
and
go back
Photoshop.
and forth so easily.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So, yeah, and so like then, one of the other things that I did want to talk about is that like not always do you have to go into Photoshop. Let's say you have like a really beautiful image. I mean, I would say this is a pretty great image. There's not a whole lot that we're going to be doing except for when we show you the compositing and all that kind of stuff. But,
Yeah.
let's say that I did want to just do some of my edits here in Lightroom, right? So let's go to the one image from our mockup. So if we go to, let me show you one of my favorite techniques is the, I guess, I don't, in Photoshop, it's called spot removal tool. There you go. And so this tool is the best. It's kind of like one of those things, you can honestly do this even before you go into Photoshop if you want. Like it's
Yeah.
a great tool. But it's like perfect for making like little adjustments, right? So like let's say, there's obviously this little pear had a little bruising, poor little thing. So we're gonna select heel, we're gonna keep this sizing, and I like to use the brackets key to kind of like go up and down in size,
Hmm.
but you can also do it over here.
Yeah.
Um, and I like to keep the feather and the opacity at, the top. And it's like perfect, you know?
Yeah. That's awesome.
I know. And so then, let's see. We go this way. Perfect. And I start applying. Oops, there we go. Oh. And so one of the things too that it's pretty cool is that you can go back and edit these little edits too. They don't like they
Right.
kind
It
of
doesn't
stay there.
lose.
Yeah, you don't lose it. So you can always like, hit
It's
delete and then it
non-destructive.
goes away. Yeah.
Yeah. That's nice.
Yeah. So I can just do these like simple edits like right here, and you can move it, right? You can move the
Hmm.
direction of where it's sampling from. And the one thing I will say that I do enjoy about Photoshop over, Lightroom Classic sometimes is that because it saves it, right? I can't like there's some it's a little difficult sometimes if there's like things that I need to fix that are like right next to each other. That's always like
Right.
the kind of like
Yeah.
tough part. But for the most part, oh yeah, no problem. So then, I'm gonna be yeah, this is like the part where I'm showing you the spot removal tool in Lightroom Classic, which is like great if you don't have a whole lot to fix. You can kind of stay in Lightroom and make these edits here. So for example, let me just remove these here. There's a little bit of bruising on this pair. So it's just over here in this little panel. It's at the top right. It's got the little band-aid. It's super cute. And so I always have the heels, selected. You can also do clone too. And I think clone works great, almost in a similar way to the stamp tool in
Yeah.
Photoshop. But I usually like to use heel for these kind of things because I do want Lightroom to sample, and so I can kind of make those decisions of where it
Yeah.
goes.
Where
So
it's sampling from.
yeah, and then again, I'm using my bracket keys to kind of go up and down in size, and I'm just fixing like the little bits, and obviously sometimes Lightroom doesn't know exactly where I want to sample from, so
You
I
have to
have to
tell
kind
it.
of guide it. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But like I can do that whole thing right here, and that's pretty good right
Yeah.
there. You know, oh no, I don't want that. So sometimes I have to like zoom out a little bit. Let me see. There you go. Where'd it go? Okay. Why would it sample over there? I don't know. So sometimes,
It wants you to get real creative.
it wants me to get wild.
Like, let's test this out. Let's see what happens if this
Exactly.
pear is orange.
So like that's pretty much how I would do any spot healing in Lightroom, but obviously
Yeah.
like I'm going to be showing you a little bit more of that tomorrow, but yeah, that's pretty much what I
Yeah.
what
Feel
happens in Lightroom.
Feel free to download these files so that you guys can edit your own and upload them to Discord so we can see them. And then make sure to come back tomorrow as we're going to jump into Photoshop. We'll
Yes.
see you
Yes.
then.
See ya.